Hi, I'm Christopher Dennis.
And I'm Bella Harrogate.
And this is Line Direct's Tribute to Veterans Day. So every year at the courthouse there's a gathering to honor veterans both living and dead.
Here's a clip from that event.
I want to welcome you to the Hunt County Courthouse today for our official observance of Veterans Day. When President Woodrow Wilson first proclaimed what is now Veterans Day on November the 11th, 1911, he said that the day would be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in our country's service and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it freed us and because of the opportunity that it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of nations. Many conflicts have followed that first great war, and unfortunately some Americans have forgotten the principles for which this country stands. The United States has been and remains a peaceful country, dedicated to the ideas of justice and freedom until she is aroused to action by unprovoked attack, unchecked aggression, mindless genocide, or insidious expansion. And in those times of crisis, the country calls upon the men and women of our armed forces, our citizen soldiers, to defend her people and the freedoms that we hold so dear. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we gather together today to honor those men and women who have chosen to serve us, who have endured long separations from their families, who have missed the births of their children, who freeze in sub-zero temperatures or who smother in thick jungles, who are wounded, traumatized, and far too often lose their lives in order to preserve our own. There are no words powerful enough to do justice to their sacrifice, but we can, on a day like today, remember and honor them. With that in mind, please join me in a moment of silence as the Hunt County Veterans Honor Guard posts the American flag.
Honor Guard, look! Forward! Left, left, right, left.
Now, wasn't that great?
It sure was, Bella.
I feel like thanking a veteran now.
Well, you can because we have many staff members at GHS who have served in the military. In fact, we have interviewed some of them for their names, ranks, what branch they served in, and when they served.
I'm Coach Johnson. I was in the U.S. Navy Air. I was an E3 stationed in Vietnam on the USS Coral Sea. I served for 6 years.
Okay. My name is James Kirkpatrick. Rank was Spec 5. I was in the Army for 2 years. Served there in 1971, 1972.
Good morning. My name is James Reed. I'm a retired naval officer. My rank was a lieutenant commander. I'm the senior naval science instructor at the Navy ROTC unit in Greenville. I was in the United States Navy for 30 years, and I went in 1968 and served for a 30-year period. I retired back in 97 and immediately started working in the NJROTC program.
My name is Joel Pitts. I served in the United States Army. I made the rank of specialist, and I served from 96 to 2000.
Okay, Charles Davidson. I was in the U.S. Army. My rank was E5, which is the same as a buck sergeant while I was in there, and served for 6 years in infantry primarily. And during that time, it was in 1972 to about 1978, so it was quite a while ago.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to go ahead and take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you here for 2013 Veterans Day celebration. What a wonderful time to come together as a community, both with the guests, students, faculty, and veterans, the most important ones here today. Veterans, we are here today to honor you, to thank you, and to show you the gratitude that you so richly deserve. Please be seated. And thank you, Greenville Independent School District, combined bands and choirs for that fine rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. What is Veterans Day and why are we here? What brings 2,600 people to the gymnasium of the high school? And not only this town, but towns all across this great country. What are we doing? Why are we here? Why are we celebrating? You know, sometimes we have to go to lengths to educate our children, to let them understand of the heritage and what has come before them, and then one day what would be expected of them to continue to pass it to their children. I'll never forget, I was with my grandfather. I was about 10 years old. He lived in Fort Worth, and we were on a parking lot outside a store or something, and these 6 Navy jets flew over from Carswell Air Force Base. And my grandfather looked at me, and he was a veteran of World War II, and he looked at me and he said, "Son, do you know what that is?" I said, "It's 6 jets flying in the air." He said, "No." He said, "That's the sound of peace." So why do we honor and recognize Veterans Day? World War I, known as the Great War, officially ended with the Treaty of Versailles, and it was signed on June 28, 1919. However, the fighting continued for 7 more months, and there was an armistice or temporary stop to the hostilities. And finally, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the fighting stopped and the guns fell silent. And is generally regarded as the end of wars to end all wars. In November 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first Armistice Day. And his belief was there would be a brief suspension of business for parades around 11 o'clock. But it has grown to so much more than that. And finally, on May 19th, 1938, the Congress of the United States made the 11th of November each year a legal national holiday, a day set aside to honor the veterans of all wars. And that was never more true after World War II. And since then, Vietnam and the conflicts in the Middle East, Desert Storm, and all the others that America has been embroiled in, to make sure our way of life is continued as we know it today.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Major A.J. Henley. I'm a pilot over at the 645th Aeronautical Systems Squadron here in Greenville. I'd like to thank you all for attending today's ceremony. The purpose of today was to kind of think about Veterans Day, and I thought a lot about what it meant to me. And for me, it's a day of giving thanks. You can never give enough thanks for the things that we have here, especially in this great country. I'd like to start off with you guys trying to visualize what you think a veteran is in your head. If you just imagine that, is it somebody that you love? Is it a brother, a sister, your father, your grandparents? Is it Rambo? I don't know. Most of us don't fit the description of Rambo, but most of us are just normal people here, and we had a set of ideals that we held important. What they'll tell you the dictionary definition of a veteran is somebody who has vast experience in a particular field. And the federal government also defines veterans as anybody who served honorably in any service at any time. Now, what does that mean to you? That means these people have done things that have made them heroes. They've gone out and they've done the things that most normal people won't do. Right now, there's about 21.5 million veterans in the country. If you look at that, that's less than 10% of the population. So this is less than 10% of the population shouldering a huge burden so you could do things like go to school and not be afraid of things. Guess we already had the Armistice Day was talked about, so thank you for that. Thank you for the history lesson there. But the purpose of Veterans Day is to honor those who served before us. And these people come from all races, all creeds, all ideological and religious backgrounds. And I've had the personal pleasure of serving with many of these people. And if you look down in the front, we have a lot of our veterans down here also, and they're from the same diverse backgrounds as you. What I wanted to join the Air Force for was to protect the people that I held dear. I had many people of mine in my family and my friends that were Army veterans, and I wanted to fly and fight above them. So what that means is that we wanted to stand up for what is right in this country. The big thing about veterans here is that they don't shrink away from danger, they run towards it. If you look at all these fights, there's not very many people who stood up and decided to do what was right. Let's see. So I'd like to also point out that many of these veterans continue to serve in some capacity in the local community. If you look around, you'll see some of these people who are teachers, who are firefighters, who are policemen, and they continue that spirit of service after they're done serving their country in their service. So the other portion of this whole thing is that these military members were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for you. Not all were called to do so, but some were, as represented by this chair. But I also like to remember that there's many small sacrifices that your veterans have made for you. Some of you may be familiar with some of these things, like the food that the military serves you. Not the greatest. That's one of the small things that we had. We all shared the common bond of going through some sort of basic military training. That's probably your first introduction to the poor food and the distasteful things that you may have to do while you're in the military. I don't know how many of you have some sort of recipe for Ranger pudding. If you had an MRE or of some sort, you probably remember making some sort of Ranger pudding. It included some sort of pound cake for me, and chocolate milk mix and some water. So those were some of the fun things. You also had to deal with many of the other things, like sleeping in poor conditions. You had bunks, you had cots, you had foxholes, you had everything that was not your bed at home. And that's one of the things that I'd like to point out, is that these people had sacrificed their small things, like being at home with their families and seeing things that nobody else had to see. I even have met some of these veterans here. I've met a couple of World War II veterans who made huge sacrifices in the way that I do business now. They flew on B-29s. I didn't see them in the audience today, but they actually had to wear those big bomber jackets that are a fashion statement now. But they were actually a life-saving device for them that kept them warm back then. Now I have an airline laboratory in my airplane. I have a navigator. I have GPS guidance, so I always know where I'm going and what I'm doing. I also have a microwave so I can warm up my food and my coffee, which is a great thing for me. So I really appreciate all these things. That they've made the road easier for me in my service as well, which is a great thing. And what they've done is they've missed many of the comforts of home here. So I'd like to thank you for doing that and for taking that sacrifice for us. Before I close, I'd also be remiss in thanking, if I didn't thank the families. So I see a lot of the family members of the veterans here, and I know that many of you missed your veterans, and you wish that they were home, and you sat there and you had to hold up the house. You had to keep things running while they were gone. And I don't know how many of you children out there have veterans in your families, but thank you also for being the backbone of support that helps the veterans stay alive when they're out there. It takes a huge network of people to keep veterans going, and we certainly appreciate all the strength and support that we get from the local community. Things like this really give us the will to carry on. So before I close, I'd like to say thank you to the veterans that we have here in the audience. I know many of you have made the sacrifices that so many will not make. I want to thank all of you for putting this on. And just remember to give thanks to a veteran. Lots of times that's all they want is just, if you see a veteran walking around with a hat, just come say hi and say thank you for the service, because they've truly done things that you can't imagine. And thank you guys for putting on this show.
I'm Christopher Dennis.
And I'm Bella Harrigy.
And this has been Line Direct.